So Seth Andrews is a video producer and a former Christian broadcaster. Seth chronicled his transition from believer to atheist in his autobiography, Deconverted, A Journey from Religion to Reason. I think he has those here tonight. He hosts the Thinking Atheist podcast, one of the most popular online atheist communities in the world. The Thinking Atheist weekly radio podcast is downloaded 1.5 million times a month. Seth is with us this evening to speak about his new book, Sacred Cows, A Lighthearted Look at Belief and Tradition Around the World. So please join me in welcoming Seth Andrews.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Kind of an anticlimax, isn't it? It's like, ladies and gentlemen, please wait. Brian, do I have this on right? I can't really see. Do I have it on the ear? Thank you. Forgive me. All right. First of all, thank you so much for coming out. If you were to describe an event like this to someone who had never done an event like this, it must sound like a huge anticlimax. What are you going to do tonight? We're all going to go sit in chairs and listen to some guy talk about why he doesn't believe in God. Okay, I'm busy, that kind of thing. But this evening is more than that to me. It's an opportunity for us to get together, to celebrate a common interest, to be together as a family, to make friends, to do what we do, something that the church often claims a monopoly on. What they say is, you're getting together for a gathering? Sounds like church. You guys ever heard that particular argument? So you've got a speaker, aka preacher? Sounds like church. And of course, I always remind them that, community existed long before the church ever did. And this is what human beings do. We get together to connect and challenge each other and laugh and love and hug and hang and just make each other better. This is not a church experience. This is a people experience. And if this is church, my friends, Comic-Con is church, Bowling night is church. Political rock concerts are church. Come on, I am here to shamelessly plug and hopefully sell a few copies of Sacred Cows. For those who've been following me, I'm terrified that the delays in getting it published, and the delays have been significant enough over such minor things. I was legitimately terrified that there was like a little blue-haired church lady on staff at the publisher who was doing God's good work by sabotaging it was so frustrating. There were just a couple of minor tweaks. I need a punctuation change here, this letter capitalized on the cover. I want this graphic moved. Easy, right? If I'm doing it, it would take me all of 10 minutes. But because I was waiting on them, I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting on an order of months. And finally, when I was in Vancouver at Imagine No Religion 5, I got final approval on all of the art, and they shipped, and actually the California groups got copies of the books before I did. So they were the first to see the actual printed cover. But I'm terrified that the delay has caused expectations to go up here. Anticipation. No, it's going to be bring that level of expectation down. Hello, it's got cartoons and shit in it. Okay, it's lighthearted, which is why I call it a lighthearted look at belief and tradition around the world. I've done some speeches around the world lately that have been kind of heavy. I don't know if you guys saw the Australia speech that was, it's kind of a dark thing. And then we just finished one up I'm going to post to YouTube where we tackle some heavy topics regarding Mother Teresa. And, it's just heavy stuff. So tonight's going to be a little more light. Would that be okay? How many of you, by a show of hands, have a fear of snakes? I thought that number would be higher. The rest of you are liars. Well, a lot of people in this world suffer from the fear of snakes. It's called ophidiophobia. And I totally understand. There is something about the sinister line of the snake. The scales, the darkly intelligent, never closing eyes, the arrow-shaped head, the forked tongue, the smiling mouth of the snake. And of course, inside the mouth of the poisonous snake is a venom-filled syringe of doom. Okay? Well, apparently, our fear of snakes has an evolutionary origin. There was a study helmed by a few people, including Michael J. Pacunis and Richard Koss at the University of California's Department of Psychology, and it revealed that the mere sight of a snake or a legless reptile triggers a natural fear mechanism in the primate brain. It's apparently a holdover from our distant past, when a fear of snakes kept us from getting bitten and therefore killed. Snakes, and the fear of snakes, rather, was a key element to our survival. Speaking of the fear of snakes, by the way, check out Piranaconda on Sci-Fi. It is a horror classic, okay? It's just awesome. You guys ever watch Sci-Fi? They combine all of the animals. Did they do Sharknado, or I'm thinking of Sharktopus? Sharktopus? Okay, yeah. If you look above, right behind me in my extremely boring slide, scientists in Brazil and Japan have recently tested something called the snake detection theory. It was posed back in 2007 by an anthropologist named Lynn Isbell. And it examined a region of our brains called the pulvinar. Now, apparently, neurons in the pulvinar receive signals from our eyes and send them directly to the brain to draw our attention to specific objects in our field of view. If you'll forgive my poorly photoshopped slide here. If you're looking at a bunch of different stuff in your field of view, right? You see a table, a chair, there's a grassy area, you see some plants, you see the red building, you see the fence, you see the flowers. The snake automatically, even when it's not poorly photoshopped, the snake becomes immediate your point of focus. It's where your eye locks, okay? And this quick recognition has been a critical element of our survival over time. In fact, we probably ought to be thanking the snake, because if Professor Isbell's data is correct, snakes are a primary reason that we higher primates have larger brains and superior vision. Snakes made us smarter. Well, actually, snakes made some of us smarter. My friends, there is a church culture that instructs the faithful to not only ignore their panicky pulvinar, but to actually invite poisonous snakes into their homes and their churches for a Sunday morning snack. These wild, weird, pulpit-pouting Pentecostals are called snake handlers, and you have not lived until you have seen their antics on YouTube. And you can go to YouTube and type in snake handlers. It is alarming. Scattered throughout Alabama, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia, there are, right now in the year 2015, an estimated 125 snake-handling churches. And they take literally the words of Mark 16:18, "They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." Except when they don't. I had Vincent DePorter, my illustrator for the book, draw this one up. It's got the pastor's feet with a toe tag on it, you know. This guy's name is Pastor Jamie Cooch. You saw him in the headlines, didn't you? Pastor of the Full Gospel Tabernacle in Jesus' Name in the Appalachia Hills. He was also a TV star. He was star of the Nat Geo television series called Snake Salvation. He was bitten on the hand and he died on the 15th of February of last year. Now, he had been bitten 9 times before that, okay? It's not like he didn't see the writing on the wall. In fact, at one point, he was bitten on the middle finger of his right hand. He did not seek medical attention, and he just waited until the flesh and bone rotted off. Ugh. News reports of his death popped up in the New York Times, USA Today, the Huffington Post, even the Wall Street Journal. I think I saw an article in the Independent. Overseas media. This is how they see the United States. It's tragic. Well, this is interesting. His son Cody in the wake of his father's death, in his infinite wisdom, informed the Christian Post and the rest of the world that, snakebite is really not a bad way to go. Especially when compared to like stroke or car wreck, right? And this is my favorite part. He went on social media and he said he aspired to one day take up his father's mantle to become a snake-handling minister himself, and immediately after that announcement asked people for money, because of course that's what all preachers do, because his father hadn't carried a life insurance policy and the family had no money. Now let's recap for just a second, okay? Somebody does something incredibly stupid. Something goes wrong. They panic and ask us to assist. And then they make the announcement that the stupidity will continue. In the book, I compare this to somebody coming to you and asking to help buy them a new house after they torched the old one in a meth explosion, right? That's a lot what this is like. Humans aren't the only ones that suffer, by the way, for the snake handling phenomenon. There are charges that snake handlers often will abuse the animals, dehydrated, malnourished, and sick. What this does is it makes them less aggressive because they're weak during the services. They're less inclined to bite. And if they do bite, the malnourished snake has much less potent venom. So they're much less likely to die from it. Oh, it's a miracle. God is good. Now, to add to the insanity, check this verse out. Remember Mark 16:18, right? They shall take up serpents and drink strychnine or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you read the work of credible Bible historians like Dr. Richard Carrier, it appears that those verses didn't even appear in the earliest manuscripts of the book of Mark. In the earliest manuscripts, they stop at the verse 8. So all of these verses about snake handling were added after the fact by someone else, likely forged or just inserted, because they were looking for a more satisfactory ending to the crucifixion story. How tragic is that? By the way, Carrier's book is called Hitler, Homer, Bible, Christ, which is, by the way, one of my nominations for best book title ever. Hitler, Homer, Bible, Christ is just awesome. Now, many people would call Coots's death just another way of thinning the herd, right? It's a healthy way of improving the collective IQ of humanity. Come on, if he's going to handle snakes and he gets bit and he dies, so what? What's that meme going around the web that says, I'm not saying kill the stupid people, I'm saying let's remove the warning labels and let the problem sort itself out. Okay? But I'm more interested in how 21st century humans at the top of the Enlightenment chain can think that this is sacred. That just fascinates me. Let's stick with the biblical God for just a second. And let us, my friends, explore another sacred tradition, the Sabbath. Of course, we're talking about one of the commandments, right? The fourth commandment. As God rested on the seventh day, after the creation of the world, so his chosen people are charged to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And if you're an observant Jew, you have a specific series of 93 things that you are not allowed to do on the Sabbath. Plowing, planting, cooking, combing, shearing, weaving, sewing, slaughtering, tearing, cutting, writing, carrying, kindling, extinguishing. The list goes on and on and on. Now, it's these final two I'm most interested in. Kindling and extinguishing. Because for 25 hours, from Friday evening, just a few minutes before sunset, through Saturday night, you are not even allowed to cook a meal in your oven if you are an observant Jew. Let's say you want to cook a Sabbath meal, you turn on the oven. The turning of that oven knob constitutes an action, and an action will offend the great kosher chef in the sky. Lucky for Jews, appliance manufacturers have addressed the challenge with a special feature called, and you're way ahead of me, Sabbath mode. Check your home appliance, your oven, your refrigerator. I will wager it was purchased in the last 5 years. It has a Sabbath mode option on it. During Sabbath mode, when it is implemented, no lights, digits, solenoids, fans, icons, tones are displayed, can be activated during the actual Sabbath. In essence, the appliance just shuts down, and you are not allowed to use it. To ensure the necessary functions of your home appliance are properly disabled on the Sabbath, appliances can be certified through, and I'm not shitting you, kosher regulating organizations like this one, Star K. By the way, if you're not familiar with what kosher is, let me give a brief description. I talk about this in the book, but I'll do it here as well. It's from the Hebrew word which means suitable and or pure. Observant Jews believe you are what you eat, okay? And the laws of the kosher laws comprehensively legislate permitted and forbidden foods, and it's a very involved list. Here's just some highlights. Kosher meat is limited to cattle and game that have cloven hooves and chew the cud. So if a split-hooved animal doesn't chew the cud, you don't get to chew the animal. Meats are to be processed in a very specific way that removes certain forbidden fats and veins, and I just thought this was awesome. It's beef franks from Hebrew National, beef franks in a blanket. Their subtitle says, "We answer to a higher authority." Dairy products must come only from kosher animals. Meat and milk may not be combined. That's per the command of Exodus 23:19. Eggs have to come from kosher birds, and they can contain no blood. Acceptable fish have to have fins and scales. They must be trimmed with a kosher knife. Shellfish is forbidden outright, per the scripture of Leviticus. Whatever hath no fins nor scales in the waters, that shall be an abomination unto you. And the best part of this particular command is a couple of guys with some serious humor put this website online. God hates shrimp. Shrimp, crab, lobster, clams, mussels, all of these are an abomination before the Lord, just as gays are an abomination. Why stop at protesting gay marriage? Bring all of God's law into the heathens and the sodomites. We call upon all Christians to join the crusade against Long John Silver's and Red Lobster, yea, even Popeyes shall be cleansed. The name of Bubba shall be an anathema. We must stop the believers from destroying the sanctity of our restaurants. And of course, they have their tagline, pinch the tail, suck the head, burn in hell. I love these guys. Kosher fruits and vegetables must be grown via soil, plants, or trees that did not come from a field that combined two different types of seeds. That's against God's law. They also must be checked for multi-legged insects that break the kosher code. God cares what type of bugs crawl on your veggies. Wine must be fermented only with certain enzymes, and they must come from a kosher winery that prepares each bottle under strict rabbinical supervision. The list of requirements goes on and on and on and on, and it is exhausting. And on top of the food restrictions, you're not even allowed to crank up the oven or adjust the temperature to warm foods on the Sabbath. But never fear, my friends. Torah Technologies has developed a device called the tweaker. This comes in handy for the more moderate Jew who is allowed to turn knobs. And here's how it works. The tweaker mode, on Sabbath mode, on your appliance, during that 24-hour period, disables all digital functions, all indicator lights, and allows you to do all adjustments manually. That which is forbidden digitally can be done by hand, and it delays the heating of the oven hours after you turn the knob. So you crank it up Friday morning, and you get a hot lunch on Saturday. Congratulations, Jews, you've just outsmarted God. On top of all that, you are not allowed to have a lit light bulb in your oven during the Sabbath because the closing of an electrical circuit constitutes kindling. Kindling is one of the 39 actions forbidden on the Sabbath. So you must unscrew the oven light for that 24-hour period. There's an illustration in the book I had Vince do where it has the guy looking in. He says, "My bulb isn't dim." And she says, "I beg to differ." All right, fine. In Judaism, like Christianity, our problem is sin. We don't want to sin. We don't want to violate God's law, all right? We become sinful. We have to purge the evil from inside of us. Well, many Orthodox Jews honor another sacred tradition for the purpose of purging sin, and it involves a live chicken. Now, stick with me. I'm not going to show you any gruesome stuff, okay? But this is a tad alarming. Yom Kippur is also known as the Day of Atonement. It's the sacred Jewish holy day, right? And this ceremony, the Kapparot ceremony, is often performed at dawn on the day before. Now, it is customary, according to strict rabbinic rules, to use a white chicken. Your chicken must be as white as snow. One should not use a black chicken, as black is the color that represents divine severity and discipline. My favorite line in the instruction is, "Nor should one use an obviously blemished chicken." Well, of course. Of course. And here's how it works. You take the chicken in your hands. I just wanted to get this out of the way because there's always one. And you say the first paragraph of a long list of text. I won't bother with all of it. Children of man who sit in darkness and the shadows of blah, 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 blah. Who really cares, right? Then you get to the second paragraph. When reciting the beginning of the second paragraph, you grab the chicken and you wave it over your head in 3 circular motions and you say this. Once around the head with the chicken, you say, "This is my exchange." Twice with the chicken. "This is my substitute." 3rd time, "This is my expiation." And then you repeat that twice more, and then you give it to a holy slaughterer who kills the bird by chopping off its head. Grown adults do this because they believe it is a sacred practice that God desires for them to do. Yeah, it seems like a reasonable practice based on the desires of the smartest being in the universe. And of course, it's stuff we should teach our young children to do when they grow up and have children of their own, right? Because they must properly atone for sin. Now, check this out. When they're done with this ceremony, they take the headless chickens and they give them to the poor to feed poor people. Which brings the question, if you give someone else a chicken that's infected with evil, do you have to then start the process of atonement all over again with a fresh sacrifice? I don't understand. So often it is the innocent who pay the price for the insanity of humanity. Is that not the case? Here's another quick example. It's going to make your head spin. Hundreds of years, residents of a town called Brodilovo in Bulgaria have sought to cleanse the community of evil spirits, ward off rabies, and bring about fertility to the land and its people through a practice called Trechin. In Bulgarian, Trechin translates literally dog spinning. Yes, really. Here's how this practice works, and it is still being practiced today. They put together a device over a river, take a big beam, river in the middle. They take the dog. People voluntarily bring their pet dogs just for this purpose. They tie the rope around their waist, and they turn the rope until it creates the tension and it winds the rope up. And then once it can be wound no further, the dog is released to unwind for an eternal 20 to 30 seconds before the dog finally releases and splashes into the river. Quite often, the dogs are so disoriented by the time they hit the water that they drown. This is sacred. This is necessary. This is good luck. I cannot fathom it. At some point, a citizen of Brodlevo looked at another citizen of Brodlevo and said, "You know, our crops have been a bit pithy this year. Bring me some rope and a puppy." In the book, we reverse the tables. We put the human on the rope and we unspin him. We say, call that some karma, is what that is. This is medicinal right here. In villages across India, they're not spinning dogs, they're tossing babies. Villagers petition the spirits for good health, long life, and the success of their kids by dragging them up to the tops of these roofs, throwing them off of temple towers to be caught in a sheet by the crowds below. Often the kids will fall up to 50 feet. They believe that this ritual is necessary for these roughly 2-year-old children to live a blessed life. And this tradition is called sacred. The videos of these on YouTube are just horrifying. And they are protected customs. They're sacred. And the desire to appease a cosmic genie in the sky with some, let's face it, really, really weird fetishes. Don't you think? Here's another bizarre divine edict carrying out by supposedly higher primates. This one's just funny, I think. At least human adults bear the brunt of the blows. In Tamil Nadu, as they honor their temple, devotees break coconuts over heads to fulfill vows. It's a centuries-old practice, and once a year, hundreds of people converge at this site in a small state in southern India to petition the gods for good luck. What else? Bring us blessings, bring us joy, bring us good health, bring us success. And to get this, they ask a chief priest to smash a coconut over their skulls. A holy man begins the ceremony by standing on a bed of nails, and they have 7 elders sit in front of him, and he's got 2 guys following him. There's one guy to hold steady the head of the crushees, and another guy hands him fresh coconut ammo. So he does all 7 elders, and then he literally walks a line of hundreds of people to smash the holy coconut over their heads. Many of these people requiring medical treatment by attending paramedics. Apparently, some have spoken out against this bloody game of whack-a-mole, but the faithful just won't get it through their thick skulls. Let's do one more, and this one's a little hard to watch, but stick with me, okay? Pain is the name of the game in the Philippines. You guys been watching these guys every Easter? The annual Easter self-crucifixion ritual, where several of the faithful will insist on flagellating themselves bloody in the streets before having themselves literally nailed to crosses. They are convinced that creating Christ's execution will atone for sin, bring good luck, produce miracles, and show gratitude to God. This guy's name is Ruben Inaja. He lives in the San Pedro Catud village. This past spring, he was crucified for the 29th consecutive year. He had something, what he considered to be magical. There was a healing of a child or something that happened 29 years ago, and he made a vow to God that to show his gratitude, he would have himself pinned to some pieces of wood every single Easter. It just boggles your mind. To literally amplify this divine comedy, he was fitted with wireless microphone just in case the back section of gawking rubberneckers were not able to hear his screams. On top of all of this, and I am not making it up, it's become such a popular tourist attraction that area gift shops actually sell crucifixion nails to passing patrons. That's right, just as the Roman executions of old were a carnival of morbid fascination and commerce, 21st century crucifixion experiences just aren't complete until you've scored yourself some killer cell phone video and some commemorative spikes for the kids. These brave, aka stupid people who participate in this are encouraged for reasons of safety and hygiene to get tetanus shots in advance and only use sterilized nails. After all, when having cold steel driven through healthy flesh for the purpose of ritual torture, it's important to exercise cleanliness and prevent any nasty infections. Now, lest the mainstream religious attempt to distance themselves from this kind of insanity, these extremely bizarre customs designed to appease the spirits, the ancestors, a divine father in the sky, let us look at the Catholic Father for just a second, the Bishop of Rome, the Supreme Pontiff, the Pope. Pope Francis, following the resignation of Pope Benedict back in 2013, a papal conclave elected this man the following month. And during the weeks where there was no pope, a billow of black smoke came out of the papal conclave chimney. Only when the new pope was selected would the smoke color change from black to white. And here's how they chose the pope. 114 men of the papal conclave cast secret ballots. They counted the ballots, burned the ballots, cast more ballots, counted the ballots, burned the ballots, cast the ballots, counted the ballots, burned the ballots over and over and over and over for weeks, while the planet waited on edge. News outlets, large and small, broadcast 24-hour smoke cams. We were obsessed with smoke, aching for the moment it would change from black to white and allow 1.2 billion Roman Catholics to get back to their beers and bingo. Now, why would God make this the preferred method for selecting his proxy on earth? Don't you think this is kind of a big decision, right? You dress up the players so they look like 11th century chess pieces, and you lock them together, and you have them vote on what is essentially God's will. If it's God's will, why are subjective, fallible human beings voting on it? It makes no sense. Why are fallible humans voting on God's will? God could name the successor personally, for he is God. Well, actually, hang on. Because the Pope himself said God's power is limited, speaking to a plenary assembly of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in October of last year. Pope Francis himself said this, and I quote, "When we read about creation in Genesis, we run the risk of imagining God was a magician with a magic wand able to do everything, but that is not so." It's always amazing to see the Catholic Church attempting to reconcile evolutionary biology with the book of Genesis and the 66 books of the Bible. But just for a second, let's take a look at that claim. Let's take a look at Yahweh and Jesus, one and the same. Jesus said, "I and the Father are one." All right, and I talk about this in chapter 3 of Sacred Cows in a chapter called Blowing Smoke. God created the universe from nothing, right? That's conjuring out of thin air. He turned rivers to blood. That's a curse. Transformed water into wine. That's a pretty amazing trick, don't you think? He walked on water. That's levitation and or the ability to fly. And he grants our wishes, the power to manipulate matter, space, and time. God's been pulling rabbits out of his hat as a magician since the dawn of time. We know he's able to magically transform physical objects. According to the Catholic Church's own teachings about communion, how many ex-Catholics or current Catholics do we have? Yeah, I saw the guilt, the Catholic guilt, when you walked in. Glad you escaped. Right? And you're obviously familiar with the phenomenon of transubstantiation, right? The moment of communion when you have the bread, the cracker, and the wine. They magically transform it, that's microsecond, into the actual flesh and blood of Jesus Christ, right? Now, personally, I find it difficult to take the Church's word on this particular miracle. I mean, we're talking about the same church entity that asks its followers to pray to their deities, Mom, so that Mary can intercede on our behalf, right? Which essentially reveals a God that already knows everything, but yet somehow requires convincing. The same church that once condemned Galileo for the heinous charge that the sun didn't revolve around the earth. The same church whose pope once said that condoms make the AIDS crisis even worse. This is back in 2007. The same church that has permanently posted a "No Girls Allowed" sign in its halls of power. That has lifelong celibates giving marriage advice. Marriage, that blessed arrangement. Any Princess Bride fans in the house? I knew I liked you guys. The same church that employs and deploys demon police. That's played the centuries-old game of hide the pedophile priest. And that tells non-heterosexuals that they're disordered and abusing human nature. Now, does anyone see the irony of anti-gay policies handed out by fancily dressed men who do not keep the company of women and disappear in secluded rooms for long periods of time? Sacred belief systems, they're full of irony, right? When they do it, it's insane. When we do it, it's sacred. It's normal, right? The Catholic looking at the Hindu mark that said they promote goodness and success. It's ridiculous. He looks ridiculous. That's crazy. But when we do it, hey, God is good. Sacred tradition. They read about the annual goat tossing festival in Spain. They honor St. Vincent by taking a goat to the top of a church window and they throw it out to be caught on a sheet below. Many times the goat does not survive. Then they carry the goat all around town as part of a parade. In fact, the dropping of the goat kicks off the festival, and this brings, what else? Good luck to the village. That's animal abuse. It's insane. It's horrible. The same people in the Christian church who say that are perfectly fine with the slaughter of goats at the temple for atonement, as was reported in Leviticus chapter 16. In fact, they would bring 2 goats. One goat would be slaughtered right there on the spot, blood to make God happy, because God loves them some blood. And the second goat, carrying the sins of the people, would be led out into the wilderness to either be killed by a predator or to starve to death. And that was called the scapegoat. In fact, that's where we get our term today, scapegoat. That's where that word comes from. They're perfectly fine with it. What a beautiful story, right? God cleansed his people and atonement was given. People who talk about telling the future, it's ludicrous, it's evil. Well, they're perfectly fine with telling the future. They think this is child abuse. They're aghast at this. They're perfectly fine with this. Perfectly fine with it. In fact, in this story, Abraham's a hero for his obedience. The same people who say this is insanity think this is sanity. This is sacred. And as you and I wait for Christ's return, we wait for examples, we wait for signs, we wait for wonders. We ask God, please give us a sign. We ask you to give us a sign. Show us yourself. Show us your mercy. Let us hear your voice. Let us see your face. And so far, the only face we've seen has been on perishable food items. I don't understand it. This is legitimate. This is the Jesus grilled cheese. It's discovered in Mexico. Here's Cheeto Jesus. Another miracle for you might be potato chip Jesus. You see him there. I got fish stick Jesus. Banana peel Jesus. Pizza Jesus. And perhaps most embarrassingly, we have dog's anus Jesus. How can someone look at that and not see the hand of God? If you had told me when I was a believer that I'd be standing in front of a group in San Jose showing you dog's anus photographs, I would never have believed you. Where has my life taken me? You guys remember the original story of the Virgin Mary on toast, right? It was back in 2004, Diana Dizer of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She ended up selling this Virgin Mary toast. She put it on freaking eBay, and she brought in $28,000. And the best part was the buyer was Harrah's Casino. And the casino put this sandwich on display inside the casino, and I think it's still being shown there today. Now, look, we're down here on earth, right? We're jumping through hoops, we're watching and often creating huge amounts of suffering, corruption, distraction, confusion, and certainly unintentional comedy. And we're doing it for what? In the name of sacred tradition. We roll the bones. We drink the blood. We don the magic amulet. You guys have any New Agers in San Jose? We take up the poisonous serpent. We take up the snake. We offer up the sacrifice. We faint and are revived so that we can faint again. We blow the billows of holy smoke. And when you stop and think about all the crazy shit that we do in the name of belief and tradition, with God watching and saying nothing, we look like this. Do we not? Really? What kind of parlor trick does Yahweh, does Allah, does whoever have us up to? All of these crazy variations of crazy traditions, all conflicting with each other, all having us run the gauntlet, jump through hoops, do crazy stuff, because only then will good luck come to the community. And as we wait for the spirits to acknowledge our sacred offerings and declare that he, she, or it has been appeased, what is the message we get in return? What we get is not from the heavens, it's from people, right? Words, excuses, equivocations, apologetics, not from a divine voice, from a human voice. The high priests sell us on the notion that they've been hand-selected to speak on behalf of the spirit world. Lucky for them, they get to be the spirit world's proxy here on earth, and guess what? Their authority is sacred, and therefore should not be questioned. How convenient. The church attempts to own the idea of marriage. It calls its own narrow definition of marriage sacred. Right? We own this. We define this. It is sacred, and we are untouchable. A Bible filled with insanity is protected from criticism because its verses are sacred. Right? In fact, they tell us when I was in Christian school growing up, we weren't allowed to blaspheme in any way the Holy Spirit because that was the one unforgivable sin. I see you nod your head, right? You and I walk some of those same steps, I'll bet. Right? It's not the rape of a child. That's not unforgivable. It's not Hitler's Holocaust and millions dying in the ovens. That's not the unforgivable sin. It's not serial murder. It's hurting God's feelings. That's the unforgivable sin. Well, actually, what it is, it's using the word sacred to try to protect itself from insulation and challenge and saying, we're off limits. Off limits. Children at the mercy of preventable diseases because the right to the parents who deny vaccines are called sacred. And don't even get me started on the rights of children to grow up and be their own people. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. I'm going through it today, my own mother and father. You think about the challenges around the world. Insanity that is labeled as sacred. Right? We see radical Islam grabbing these young faces, these young minds, and saying, under the protected banner of religion, we will abuse them. because of belief and tradition. When I wrote Sacred Cows, I did so to highlight the less mainstream beliefs, okay? The less mainstream customs and practices. But I have an ulterior motive, all right? You guys are infidels just like I am, I'm guessing. So if you were to pick the book, yeah, we're infidels. If you pick up Sacred Cows, there may be a few surprises, but honestly, at the end of the day, it's my hope that the book ends up in the hands of someone who might be in some way a believer in the supernatural. Because if you've noticed, when you are a Christian, you hold true to the Genesis account, but while you mock the Mormon story, the Joseph Smith story, that's insane. It's perfectly fine to believe in a wizard, a dirt man, a rib woman, an enchanted garden, talking animals, right? That's cool, right? Joseph Smith and the magic rock and whatnot, that's insane. Right? Right, the same people who are laughing at the snake handlers are the ones who believe the verses in the Old Testament where they put the snake on the big pike and raised it up, and those who had been dying only had to gaze upon the snake and they would be healed. Right? It's a huge contradiction here. What's going on? You've got Catholics laughing at the Scientologist and the E-meter and Xenu, the intergalactic overlord that had sent the Thetans to planet Earth, and they'd all been killed by erupting hydrogen bombs, and that's insane, right? But if you look at Catholicism is no less insane. We've simply gotten used to it, right? It has become the insanity that is our normal. We hear about the cargo cults of the South Pacific, the Church of Euthanasia, all of these types of weird, wacky things. What I wanted to do with the book is to use the more wacky, wild, and entertaining examples of insanity done in the name of sacred tradition, and subtly, and at times not so subtly, connect the dot back to Christianity, to Islam, to mainstream faith, and say, actually, when you look at it, right? Communion, people drinking the blood of a snake, that's insane. But you drink blood and eat flesh once a month on Communion Sunday. It's not all that different, right? And so that was really my goal. Vince DePorter, the illustrator for the book, has drawn for Nickelodeon and he's drawn for DC Comics, and he had known personally the artists who were killed at Charlie Hebdo. We actually had him on the radio to talk about it, and those people were killed because these radicals believe that Islam is sacred and beyond criticism and reproach. Well, I've come to the point in my life when I see someone saying the word sacred, you know what I hear? I hear, I've got a weak argument and I don't want you to test me, right? How convenient for someone to say, sacred, no touchy, you don't have the authority. You're just a lay person. We are the high priests, right? What a convenient way to insulate yourself from challenge. Are there any ideas that are genuinely sacred and off limits? I don't think so. Do you guys think so? Are there any ideas that we don't get to talk about? And I've come to the point in my life when if someone says, you're not allowed to talk about this, that's the first thing I want to talk about, right? You're not allowed to ask this question. You know what? That's the first question we're going to talk about. Whatever that is, whatever you want to keep behind the curtain, whatever you're afraid to deal with, we're going to deal with that one first. There are no sacred cows, period. And all ideas must be open to scrutiny and vetted and tested day after day after day after day after day. People get respect, but ideas are not guaranteed respect. And that's an idea I've come to embrace in my own life in the past several years. There are no sacred ideas in this world. Everything's up for game to be tested and checked out. And that's a liberating place, right? Because now you don't have to take the square peg and jam it into the round hole. You don't have to take superstitious assumptions and jam them into the real world. Now we can discover things as they really are. How many of you came from some kind of fundamentalist religion? May I see a show of hands? Okay, so this is like a self-help meeting then. Okay, good. Hi, I'm Seth. I've been sober for 6 years. Hi, Seth. Yeah. Is the world more satisfying now that you know that there's no evidence for the supernatural? Do you feel liberated today? Isn't that weird? Now that I don't believe in heaven, I'm not scared of dying. Isn't that weird? Now that I don't believe there is an afterlife, this life becomes more precious. Now that I am not sort of force-fed an answer with a capital A, I've become more curious about the questions. And I'm okay that I don't know everything. And there's this weird sort of thinking that because science doesn't know everything, it can't know anything. This is often how the religious will try to minimize scientific thinking. I love waking up every day and the world being a discovery waiting to happen. I am liberated from my chains. I'm dealing right now with a very fundamentalist family. It's been a tough time. It's been, I don't know if any of you have come out of a situation where you've been sort of emotionally blackmailed by those who are doing so in the name of love, specifically Christ's love. We're praying for you. We know one day you'll wake up and see the truth. God loves you, I love you, that sort of condescending kindergarten cadence that just makes you want to crawl through the phone and just throttle somebody, right? I'm not the one talking about wizards and talking animals, for Pete's sake. 900-year-old humans and flying chariots of fire and levitation and sea monsters. I'm not the one positing that the entire planet was covered in water so that it could leave no geological evidence whatsoever. And the salvation of humanity would involve a floating zoo where camels were sitting next to penguins. And you know what I'm saying? I'm not the one making those claims. Why am I in the hot seat? And on top of that, they begin to close off a part of their heart, right? It becomes agree with me or else. Agree with me or, yeah, you're family, but you're still kind of in the out group now. My father has a saying he likes to send. He'll send it usually in text form or an email, and it says, come back to the family, Seth. They're very embarrassed that they have a son who's speaking in a manner as this. You should have seen their faces when I was in Christian radio, not to share too much personally, but I just wanted to communicate and perhaps encourage you. When I was in Christian radio, we had these cardboard cutouts of ourselves, my co-host and I, and we would have these events. And so they'd put these cardboard cutouts in all these retail outlets. It was surreal. You'd go into a bookstore and there'd be me, right? And Mom and Dad were just beaming. Oh, our son, there's a cardboard cutout of him. Oh. My Uncle Dave comes into town and they'll turn on my dad is deaf. He couldn't even hear. He'd find the radio station and have Uncle Dave listen to it so they could hear my voice on the radio, playing Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Third Day, Stephen Curtis Chapman. I'm doing God's good work. I'm a minister of the gospel. We've raised our son right. We're so freaking proud. If there was an article in the newspaper, they'd clip it out, they'd laminate it. They couldn't wait to tell people. There was an article about me in the newspaper for the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention 10 days ago. You know how much I heard back from my family? Hey, go get him, attaboy. Nothing. What I did get was messages that said, I'm sorry that you continue to preach the message that brings no joy. You are listening to the father of lies. Come back to the family, blah, 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 blah. And I'm at this weird place where I have had to draw a harder line about boundaries. Some people say they're your mother and father. So, let them say whatever they want to say. And I used to go there, and I've come to a point after 6 years where, relative or not, you don't have permission to inject negativity into my life, to tell me that I'm broken, to tell me that I'm ugly, to tell me that I'm shameful and embarrassment. And the reason I share that personal story is because after speaking with so many people here on this tour, I've found people. Maybe it was because of atheism, maybe it's because they weren't heterosexual, maybe it's for some other reason. They became the out group, and their mothers and fathers and families and friends and coworkers and whatever decided that they were going to emotionally blackmail them. You know what? I'll pray for you. Pray for you. Shifting the burden of proof and deciding that you are broken and shameful. And I want to encourage anyone in that circumstance right now that you're not alone. I can totally relate. And this is important. Just because they are your bio mom, dad, whatever, does not give them permission to attempt to define who you are. They didn't raise a clone. They raised a child that would grow up to have its own voice, have its own personality, and be able to find the facts on their own terms, right? And if they continue to inject negativity in your life, you have every right to draw boundaries to protect yourself, and to spend the time with and cultivate relationships and opportunities with the people who do act like family. I'll admit I spend most of my time in a room with a microphone by myself, and I do the show and I see the numbers come in, and they're pretty significant, and I'm very excited, but I don't get to see the faces. I don't get to hear the stories. I don't get a chance to connect until I come here, and then it's like I'm breathing. It's like I'm making up for lost time. And in some ways, I'll admit, my friends, I'm kind of using you because I'm hungry for connection with people who don't think I'm nuts, who don't think I'm the black sheep, who don't think I'm a stain, a broken branch on the family tree. People who get me. If you'll take it in the proper context, my friends, you complete me. Is that a good way to say it? So remember that family comes in many forms, and while I would never want a division in your own family tree, in your own circle, understand that your life has value and you have a right to live it without trying to be defined by someone else. Your life belongs to you, and your life on your terms is beautiful, okay? It's beautiful. I wrote a letter for a group last year. I put the letter online called You're Beautiful. It talks about all the shameful ways I used to divide myself against other people, I used to find excuses to be bigoted and discriminatory and short-sighted and small-minded. And now, honestly, I just, when I see somebody different than me, I just see beauty. I just say, that's awesome. They've expanded my horizons. And family has become the family I choose. You've taken me into your homes, into your earphones, into your jobs, into your cars. You've taken the show and made it out of 15,000 shows on Blog Talk Radio right now, we are number one. Number one. Now, that's because of you. I'm just doing this, right? It's because people listen and tell their friends, and don't tell me these are only atheists listening. No. We got people in the shadows who are going through the same types of journeys many of us went through, and they're way curious, and they're desperate to find someone who they can relate to, and maybe one day someone they can call family. And I know that people like you and I can be there for them when that time comes. And I guess that's, at the end of the day, besides the notion that, nothing is sacred, that all the ideas are up for scrutiny, I would like to say this. I've fallen in love with the good idea that the diversity of people in this room and throughout the free thought movement have provided for me a measure of comfort and friendship and support and love and beauty and challenge and all that awesome stuff that has made me better every single day. And I simply cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for coming out to the event today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. You have a little time for a little Q&A. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask?
Yeah,
Seth?
I don't have a lot of great wisdom, but I do like to spend a few minutes just to interact real fast.
Let's just do like 10 minutes.
Now,
Q&A.
two things real fast before I forget. When we're done with Q&A, if it's possible, would you guys like to take a photo with me? What I'd like to do is I want a picture of all of us together, okay? And we can hang your banner. We'll put somebody on a chair with a camera, volunteer. We'll grab someone on the wait staff to take it. Let's get a photo before we leave. This would just be an awesome kind of a deal, okay? Also, if you're not here, don't feel obligated to buy anything from the table, but before you leave, buy or not, be in line or not, if you have to go and you cannot stay because you've got a sitter for the kid or something, don't leave without letting me say hi. Even if you just have to run up real fast and say we have to go, please give me the chance to shake your hand and thank you personally for coming. It'd mean a lot to me. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I think, okay, Larry, I'll come out to you. I think for the photo, if we probably just stay where you are and we'll shoot it this direction, rather than everybody rushing to the stage. All right, Larry, hang on one second.
It's not so much a question as an observation. When those Orthodox Jews are swinging those chickens over their heads after heaping all their sins on them, wouldn't you call that a scape chicken?
I like it. The scape chicken.
Trademarked, right there.
That's a t-shirt.
Hey,
Actually,
Seth.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
All right. I've noticed within the atheist community, or perhaps just within the online atheist community, there's a group that's very skeptical of the concept of gender inequality, that's very venomous towards the idea of feminism in general. Where do you think that comes? I mean, I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, but it's offensive. Where do you think that, what's behind that? What's going on?
Oh, geez, I think the origins are probably as complicated as the people themselves. But I'll tell you, I made a statement a few months ago, and I put the actual pure definition of feminism, right? Equality for women as much as men, right? Equality for all of us. And I support feminism in that context. I am, in that regard, a feminist. So what? Some people flipped out. And I think what they did was they had been burned or they had been put off by what they considered to be a toxic element in the feminist movement, and they therefore tainted the idea of equality under the feminist banner with that person. Think of all these feminists who are just so ugly. And you know what? There are some ugly feminists. There are some ugly atheists. There are some ugly religious people. There are some ugly deists. There are some ugly people in every freaking culture on the planet. I mean, there are some people in the atheist culture that I don't want to define me, that turn me off. So what? I'm still an atheist, and I support the idea of not believing in deities until we have proof. I support equality, period. I don't care what somebody else is doing, and I don't really care what you label it. Call it Bob, right? Whatever. Call it something, but equality is the name of the game. And as far as people, I get frustrated with people who are so eager to divide instead of unite. I don't mean we have to sing kumbaya and agree with each other, but the more we bicker with each other over this crazy shit, we've got multi-billion-dollar religious organizations steamrolling over young children. And we're over here bickering about whether or not you want to call it feminism or egalitarianism. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? Sorry, you got me going. Give me such shit.
Hey, Seth. How are you adjusting to married life?
Well, what's funny is we lived together for like 3 years before we got married. So the only real difference is instead of calling her my fiance, now I call her my wife, right? The best part about that was I was looking for a wedding memory, and we didn't, especially with my family situation the way it is, I come from a culture where divorce is essentially adultery, right? You had your soulmate and you got married, and then if you divorce and you marry someone else, it's kind of almost a Catholic approach of it. The second marriage is sort of illegitimate. It is adultery in God's eyes because you are supposed to have one soulmate for the rest of your life. There are other concepts like soul ties that are used to describe this phenomenon. And so they really like Natalie, but they're uncomfortable. They hate the fact that we used to live together. We were shacking up, living in sin. We're not a legitimate family, those types of things. So, do I want to have an actual ceremony and invite my family? Oh, look, you guys sit on this side. It'll be beautiful. No. So what I did was I'd fallen in love with Alaska a few years ago, and I called up one of those little flight seeing companies, and I said, "Do you guys ever land any place that's really pretty? Because I'm thinking we might actually put our wedding stuff on and actually fly somewhere and get off and just say our vows." And they said, "Oh, we land on glaciers." You do? And so on August the 1st of last year, Natalie and her daughter and I, dressed up in full wedding regalia, got in a tiny little ski plane actually, it was for snow. And we landed on Colony Glacier outside of Anchorage at 6,500 feet. And right there on the ice, we said our vows to each other. And we had a secular officiant. There was no God mentioned. The wedding was just about us. And it was amazing. And the pictures are online if you want to see them. And I didn't Photoshop them, so just don't. We actually went there. Married life is treating me well. Thank you. Hit me.
I'm wondering, basically, I come to this group, and I also go to something on Sundays called Sunday Assembly that I've started calling Atheist Light, because it seems like it's awfully like church, except that they left the God out of it because they seem to need something about church somehow. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, do you find that you meet more people who are trying to be churchy without God, or more people
I
who
am
are
so glad.
getting away from, they get as far from anything like church as possible.
I'm so glad you brought this up. They may be using a church template, whatever. Do you think most people go to Sunday church because they're hungry to learn the next scripture memory verse? Right? They can't wait to hear the next message. In fact, they want the pastor to go on longer. Do you think they go, maybe they go for the music, communal music can be a moving thing, but I think most people go for connection, fellowship, and community. They go because their friends are there. Churches have welcoming ministries, highly trained people who know exactly how to hold their shoulders, how to do a handshake, how to greet you, eye contact, the words to say, the words to not say. Would you like some coffee? We've got some great toys over here for the kids. We've got childcare for you, everybody. By the way, there's a big concert going on for your teenagers on Wednesday. Here's all of our pamphlets. We'll call you in a few days. Thank you so much for coming. You are welcome here, right? People are communal. I am so tired of the church stamping a brand of ownership on community. How many people have ever been weird about coming to an atheist gathering because somebody somewhere was shouting from the sidelines, "Y'all going to church?" You ever felt that? A little self-conscious? Why is that? Because we have surrendered ground to the church. The church now stamps a brand of ownership on something that human beings do naturally. We need to come to, I think we're better as numbers. Would you rather be one soldier throwing pebbles at the castle wall, or would you rather be an army of 100,000 soldiers of like mind, organized, well-funded, and throwing stones at the castle wall, right? We're better, usually we're better together. Doesn't make us church. This is not a church experience, this is a human experience. And you know, if someone wants to do music and hymns and they'll substitute the structure, I don't care. And you know, Sunday assembly works for some people because Sunday just makes sense for them on the schedule. Monday through Friday is a work day, Saturday is a busy activity day, Sunday just makes sense for them. And if the church wants to throw a jeer from the sidelines, let them. I think gathering, no matter what you call it, is a healthy exercise and something that if you choose to, you should do so without shame. Let's do a couple more.
Hi, Seth. 2 questions. Can you give us 2 or 3 of your best explanations why God does not exist? And also, are you doing the atheist or the Thinking Atheist as a full-time, or what do you do for a living?
You already know the answer to this question. You're just being nice, aren't you? Well, you're very kind. Well, the company I work for folded a few weeks ago, so I'm in this weird spot where I'm attempting to be a full-time broadcaster for atheism, a full-time radio host and activist for atheism, to do what I do full-time. Now, this is not an entirely a surprise. Video production industry has been shrinking. The tools that used to be the exclusive tools of the broadcaster are now people are shooting HD videos on their cell phones. You know, that it's a much more competitive business, and they downsized and laid off, and I ended up a part-timer, and before you know it, they just decided to pull the plug. And so, and I knew it was coming, and it's been my hope to be able to do what I do full-time. It's what I'm most passionate about. I mean, this is my choice. If I want to be a part of this discussion so bad. If I was doing another job, it would drive me crazy. I'm going to try to do this full time. So, yes, I am a full-time activist. Thank you for that spontaneous question. 3 reasons that I think that there is no God. Well, I don't make that statement. I don't say there is no God. I think it's incorrect to do so. I don't think it's a scientifically tenable position. I say I don't believe in a God, right? I'm an atheist agnostic. Atheism speaks to what I know or what I think. Agnosticism speaks to what I know or don't know, and I'm an atheist agnostic. I can't prove there's not something on the membrane in the universe doing whatever, wherever. I'm not going to make that declarative statement. I don't have to. I'm saying I don't believe in a deity because I see no evidence for supernatural activity or a deity. Therefore, I do not believe there is a God. I am an atheist. But I don't like to lead with there is no God. Some people are bolder than that. Maybe they have some good reasons for doing so, but I myself shy away. I don't think that's a scientifically tenable statement. One more.
I recently, I've been listening to your podcast for a little less than a year right now, and I listened to what you're doing currently, but now I'm going back in your archives, and I recently came across the one that was about political activism and creating like an atheist political party. And the one thing that was bothering me about that was that there was not enough focus about what binds us together and what we agree upon. There was so much that of why you didn't want to become politically activated as an atheist because of our differences, but nobody's political cause has ever been nobody based what they believe in off of what they disagree upon. So I was wondering if anything had changed for you, because that was probably a couple of years ago.
When we did the show, it was the atheist, I forgot what they call the party, National Atheist Party. I just told them on the radio, I don't get it. I'd rather have atheists, personal atheists, involved in the existing parties or creating parties that are proactive. If I say I'm an atheist, it doesn't really necessarily guarantee anything else about me. And someone sent me a meme on the internet. It was atheist. It was thinking something rational. I mean, it had all these beautiful sort of adjectives to describe a rational, enlightened person. I'm like, God, I wish that was the truth, because you haven't seen my email inbox, man. It's whoa. I mean, just because someone is an atheist doesn't really guarantee that they came to atheism rationally. We don't know that. Maybe they were born into it. Maybe they never thought about it. Maybe they came to it because aliens told them there was no God. Right? We don't know. And it doesn't guarantee that they're rational about every other aspect of their life. It just means they don't believe in God, period. I don't think you can build a party around that. I just don't buy it. I think in my life, atheism talks about what I don't believe. Humanism talks about what I do. I'd rather see a humanist endeavor in some way. I think we can all rally around humans helping humans, something along those lines. It resonates more with me. I don't know. Okay. I want a picture with my family.
All right, everybody stay where you are. We'll figure this out. Okay. Okay, yeah, we just need like a really long selfie stick to
I might
reach up in this
might
area.
beg to kill the the LED light up there. And then I'd like to take one. You probably want one with yours, but I sure would like one with mine. Would it be okay if I put it on social media?
Yeah.
These are my homies.
Nobody's scared to be
Okay.
outed here. All right. Just give us a moment here and we'll figure this out. No, I don't think I want to move anybody. All right. Let's take this down real quick. Maybe we can use this table somehow. Hang
Now,
on.
if you guys are coming through, I think what we're going to do is after we're done here, we'll do a line, and then I'll be over here. But again, if you have to jet, allow me at least to quickly do a high five handshake and thank you. Okay? Someone's going to stand on the table. You're probably going to have video ready for this one because it's going to go wrong. Did you guys have fun tonight? It's such an honor to be able to be part of this conversation, and these chairs could have been empty tonight, and you guys came out. It fills my heart. I'll just be riding this wave all the way we're going to San Luis Obispo, I think, for Friday night, and we're going to do San Diego Riverside, and then I'll fly home, and then we got St. Louis and some other stuff. But it's hard for me to describe to you how much this means to me and how much you do. I know it sounds trite. It sounds like I'm running for office. It really is. It comes from you're talking to a guy who honestly has, someone once said, well, didn't your lack of religion, not believing in God, flip your life upside down? And I'm like, no, it turned my life right side up, right? And so now I look out at other people who nod and smile whenever we talk about living in a rational world, a world where we are humanist, helping other people, real solutions to real problems, making the world a better place without all this insanity. And you guys are sort of on that journey with me, and it just fills my heart. So just know that it means the world to me. Are we about ready? I'm going to take this wireless rig off here real fast.
Check, check.